again, everyone. Hope that you had a good break. Let's get back into it. This first unit is about four-part writing, and we're going to concentrate in this little video on the outer voices, the idea of chordal distance, and tendency tones. So what we have here is the hymn tune Eventide. You may know it as the music for the hymn Abide With Me by British composer and organist William H. Monk. Let's give this a listen just so we have it in our ear. It's a great tune and very effective, and we could spend an entire week just on this tune. There's a lot of good stuff going on in here. But let's take a look at the outer voices, the soprano and the bass. The inner voices are, of course, the alto and the tenor. But we're going to look at the soprano line, which is here the black-stemmed notes at the top of the right hand, and the bass line, which is the red-stemmed notes at the bottom of the left hand. The thing you notice about it is, first of all, there's a variety of motions. You see oblique motion here. The soprano stays the same while the bass descends. We also have oblique where the bass stays the same and the soprano descends. We have contrary motion, B flat to C in the bass, F to E flat in the soprano. We have another contrary motion. We have a nice similar motion, a parallel 10th, parallel 3rd thing. So there's a mixture of all different types of motions. If you were to go through and look at all of this, you'd probably see a fair amount of contrary, a little bit of similar, more oblique than you might think, and parallels, of course, limited to just the occasional parallel 3rd, 10th, or 6th, as we see here. So when dealing with the outer voices, you're going to have a variety of motions. We'll find this to be true with the inner voices as well, but let's just concentrate on the outer voices for right now. Notice it also seems to break apart into 4-bar phrases. Let's listen to this first phrase again, and let's talk about the ending of it, what we call the cadence. Alright, so our key here is E flat. We're clearly in E flat. And we have a cadence here at the end where we end on an E flat chord, which makes a lot of sense. It's preceded by this B flat 7 chord in first inversion. If you look at the notes here, B flat, D, F, A flat, that's a B flat 7 chord. The 3rd is in the bass, so that's a first inversion chord. Notice how it feels conclusive, but not entirely conclusive. Contrast that to the last of the phrases, starting in bar 13. And you'll notice a couple things. They both end with B flat 7 chords going to E flat chords. But in the ending phrase, both chords were in root position. Whereas in the first phrase, only the E flat chord was in root position. The B flat chord was in an inversion. This is a stronger sounding cadence than this one, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that our bass is moving by a leap of a perfect fourth here, as opposed to a step here. The other thing that makes it stronger is our soprano line here ends on G, which is the 3rd scale degree. Now, 3rd is a part of the tonic triad, our 1 chord. This would be a 5, 6, 5 to 1. It's a root position 1 chord. G is part of that. Certainly does not make it a not strong chord. But here the soprano line ends third scale degree, second scale degree, first scale degree. 3, 2, 1. Apologize for not getting the carets in here. I'll see if I can add those in as we go along here. Third scale degree, second scale degree, first scale degree. That's going to be a much stronger sound than ending 5, 4, 3 like we do up here. This cadence is a stronger cadence than this one, even though they involve the same last two chords, because the bass moves by fifth as opposed to step, or ascending fourth, descending fifth, and the soprano ends on 1 instead of the third scale degree, as you see up here. Let me add that in. Get this 5, 4, 3 here up the top. This is entertaining, riveting television, I know. The difference in scale degrees here means that this ending is much more conclusive than this one. Otherwise, harmonically, they'd be exactly the same. When you want to give a strong conclusion, you end up with something like 3, 2, 1. And if you're keeping score at the home game, page 221 in your textbook has an example of melodic cadential patterns in major and minor that are ranked in order from strong to least strong. And pages 219 to 220 have the same thing for bass lines. And you'll find that the ascending fourth, descending fifth bass line, 5 to 1, is much stronger than 7 to 1. You also have these other cadences in the middle of the piece, at the end of each 4-bar phrase, of varying degrees of strength as well. But the first phrase and the last phrase have the two strongest cadences of the bunch. So we've looked at the motion, we've looked at the melodic motion toward the moment of rest, toward the cadence, and that's kind of interesting. Let's talk a little bit about some of the chordal dissonances going on here. Let's take a look at this B flat 7 chord, this 5, 6, 5 chord in the key of E flat. I'll just add in the 1. This way it'll just be easier to see what's going on here. Where is the 7th of the chord? The root's B flat, so the 7th would be, that's right, A flat. 3rd in the bass, 5th, 7th of the chord. Notice how it resolves. There's some dissonances built in here. There's what interval is between the bass and the soprano, between the 3rd of the chord and the 7th chord. That's right, that's our old buddy, the tritone, a diminished 5th. Notice how it resolves. The 3rd of the chord steps up. This is a tendency tone. It tends to do something. To the tonic, the 7th of the chord steps down to become the 3rd of the next chord. This dissonance, this diminished 5th, this tritone must resolve inward. Let's take a look at the same thing down here at the end. Our final B flat 7 chord here, which happens on beat 4, but the rest of the tenor is the only one that moves on beat 4. The bass, alto, and soprano all move on beat 1, beat 3. Let's take a look at how that works. Where is the 7th of the chord now? That's right, in the tenor. Now notice it still steps down to the 3rd of the 1 chord. Same thing that it did here, just in the tenor. The D still resolves upward to the E flat. The 3rd of the chord steps up to become the root of the 1 chord. In this case, the augmented 4th expands out to be a 6th. So when you have the diminished 5th, or when it's written as a diminished 5th, chances are it's going to want to resolve inward to a major 3rd. E flat to G is a major 3rd. If we were in a minor key, this would be a minor 3rd. But the process would be the same. 4th scale degree steps down to the 3rd scale degree. 7th scale degree steps up to the tonic. Same idea here. 7th steps up to the tonic, 4th scale degree down to the 3rd scale degree. So what we have here is a chordal dissonance, the major minor 7th chord. And as we'll see, other 7th chords as well can operate under similar parameters, except for the major major. That's kind of its own thing, but we'll deal with that here and there. But the major minor 7th especially has certain expectations, and one of them is that the 4th will step down to the 3rd, the tonic, the 7th chord will step up, 7th factor, the 7th scale degree. It was a long break. The 7th scale degree will step up to the tonic. We see that here. We see the same thing here. We see something similar when we have a chord that's outside of the key. We have a C7 chord going to an F minor chord here. Same thing. The 7th of a C7 chord is a B flat. It steps down to become the 3rd of the F minor chord. The 3rd of the C7 chord is an E. It steps up to double the root, or triple the root actually, of the F minor chord. So the same motion is present here, just in a localized different key, and we'll talk about what that means later on as well. Now the cadence here in the second phrase is a lot more inconclusive. It feels like it's still wanting to go somewhere. Let's listen to that second phrase. That's just hanging out there. We end on the B flat, which is the 5 chord. It feels like there should be something there. And of course, to satisfy us, then the third phrase begins with. We end up with a 1 chord in the next phrase. But the phrase itself actually is here. This is the moment of cadence. Similar principle. We're going to a B flat chord here. So we have an F7 chord. This one in second inversion. The 3rd of the chord steps up to become the root of the next chord. The 7th of the chord, E flat, steps down to become the 3rd of the next chord. Same basic principles work here. Chordal dissonance must be resolved. When it's written as an augmented 4th, as it is here, and as it is here, and as it is here, it usually resolves to some sort of 6, major or minor, depending on your key. We see that there. When it's written as a diminished 5th, as it is here, usually resolves inward to a major 3rd, if you're in a major key. Minor 3rd if you're in a minor key. So we've seen that at these moments of cadence, there are certain patterns that tend to happen. If we want a conclusive cadence, a very strong conclusive cadence, 3-2-1 is hard to argue with 5-1 in the bass. Slightly less conclusive, you can have 5-1 or 7-1 in the bass and step down or step up even to a 3, or even a 5. There are occasions where the 5th of the chord will be relevant there. And on the even less conclusive cadences, you're going to have different patterns. We'll be looking at this particular hymn tune quite a lot over the course of the semester. It's very effective. There's a lot packed in here. But in the meantime, I think that's enough for us to have a good start here. We'll be talking a little bit about the internal voices as we go farther along here and how this whole thing works. I would review 1st and 2nd and 4th species counterpoint. The rules aren't exactly the same because we're now working in a tonal rather than a modal situation, but I think you'll see some overlaps. So I hope you enjoyed this. Welcome back once again, and have a great